American community, communities of color, that have been passing away recently, very young age, strokes, especially in the entertainment community, from Heavy D to, you name it. There's been so many over the past year, comedians and so forth and so on, from diabetes and stroke. People mostly under the age of 50 and some under the age of 45. And so that being said, I'd be interested to know, would you say that it's not too, you would say it's not too late? You have some people that are older that are your clients, do people that are smoking or so forth and so on, would you tell them that, anytime, even if they're older, is a good time to try to get into the system or the practice to start to try to reverse some of the damage that they've done?
Well, the reason we started the ANCAR 2000 program was to give people an easy entrance into aerobic exercising without exhausting them or causing them to have a lot of soreness. And most people, they start into an exercise program and they get sore and they give up because of the inflammation that takes place in the legs. Well, this particular program, what makes it very unique is that it's not stressing to the body. You don't get all that inflammation in your legs, but you do develop. You do develop your internal systems of your endurance and stamina, and you do feel better and better as you go through the process. Also, this program was created because if you heard in the acronym athletic neurocardio, cardio means that this is supposed to help the heart work better also. So in the cardio, what we're seeing now is people having strokes at younger ages. I don't know if the other day, last couple of weeks, you heard of Heavy D. Heavy D just died of a stroke. There was also this other rapper named Nate Dogg, just died of a stroke. And before then, we had little Albert, not Albert, but another R&B singer, about 40, died of a stroke. And so
there's been quite a few.
Yes, they're dying at earlier ages. And what we identify with that is that their breath is getting very weak. Their diaphragm is getting too big. And they're not massaging the internal organs, and their circulation is very weak. And so that's why I brought this program out into the general public, so that the general public could get healthier aerobically and cardiovascularly, so that their cardiovascular system could get better by improving their nervous system.
Right.
So
and
we
speaking
have
of,
some people. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yes, I was going to ask you about the connection of breathing and the nervous system strength that you mentioned earlier, since you were talking about the nervous system.
Well, what we see is that your nervous system is actually, from the brain, it's like a computer. And when we're first born, we say that all of us have a computer of about 500 megahertz. That's what we say the brain is. When you become an athlete, even as an athlete, your brain is still only 500 megahertz. But as you get older, your brain starts losing that 500 megahertz and moving down to 300 megahertz and 200 megahertz and 100 megahertz. And that's how these different conditions come at you, because your brain is the nervous system sending the power to your body to stay well. Well, the goal of the ANCAR program is to increase the megahertz in the brain, so that instead of having 500 megahertz, you could have 1 gigahertz, 2 gigahertz, 3 gigahertz, just like taking your computer into a computer technician and telling him to increase the megahertz in your computer. Or increasing the RAM in your computer, where your computer can process better. Your computer can do multiple functions better. Well, that's what this breathing does for the brain. That's why the person who had cardiomyopathy, that's why his heart got stronger, because his nervous system is stronger to help make his heart work better, in spite of the fact that the pacemaker still was not keeping his heart working stronger. Through his nervous system getting stronger, now it's helping the pacemaker keep his heart working stronger. So that's what this ANCAR program is. That's where the neuro comes in. See, the acronym is AN, standing for the nervous system or the neurological improvement, and then the cardio improvement, cardiovascular, through the aerobic improvement to the regeneration of the body. And so when we look at people who have even had strokes, where they've been damaged, paralyzed, this particular program, through one aspect of this program, is doing the needleless acupuncture. It can help to start regenerating their nervous system to help their bodies to start repairing itself. To give you an example, another case of mine was a brother who had a stroke. And the stroke came about from, well, it wasn't quite a stroke. It was a paralysis. It came about from him getting an operation on his hernia. He had a hernia. And normally a hernia is an operation that is a minor operation. But because the surgeons who worked on him, they damaged his nervous system, so part of his body was paralyzed.
Wow.
The whole left side of his body, his arm and his leg. So for 5 years, he had been going to get therapy, physical therapy at different institutes. One is called Child Swap, and then he went to another institute, Chicago Rehab. These are major institutes. They're like the top of the line institutes. And he went to another institute in another city. After 5 years, his arm was still going into a spasm so bad that it was making his head turn and jerk into his arm so bad that it would cause him to get headaches. The spasms were so bad. His fingers, his hand was all curled up where he couldn't open his hand. His leg would go into spasms, both his legs. Now, 5 years after he was getting this therapy, I started seeing him about 6 weeks ago. And 6 weeks ago, I started teaching him a technique in the breathing where he would say a certain sound in the breathing that would trigger his brain to release his hand and to release his arm so that he could start using his hand again, so that his head would stop going into spasms with his neck and his arm. 6 weeks later, he can now zip his jacket up with that same hand that was going into spasms. And he's not having the spasms with his neck and his head causing him to have headaches. And he's able to walk up the stairs now and walk down the stairs from his wheelchair. And he's able to stop his leg from spasming going up the stairs and down the stairs because I taught him this secret in the breath that could let go of his muscles and stop them from spasming. Now,
that's powerful.
Another secret of the breath that I share with people who are paralyzed. I've had another case where a person, she was young. She was only 40 when she had a stroke. And her arms were all bent up. They were all pulled tight to her body. And she had not been able to let go of her arms and her legs for 5 years. I started working with her, and I started teaching her the secret of this breath sound, and we were able to have her start opening her hands and her arms where she could start using her arms again. And then started to
that is really
use
powerful.
her legs.
That's powerful.
Thank
and
you.
that is just, I mean, just imagining, thinking of your patient who, I mean, you basically said that his hand was, or his arm was not useful. In fact, it was causing, a dramatic amount of chaos in his life, and now for it to be functioning again, and in the most simple way, but that itself, I mean, just the simplicity of being able to zip up your jacket with an arm for years that you weren't able to use. In 6 weeks, I can only imagine how uplifting and just how amazing to your client that must be, or your patient. But we have someone on the line.
He has been very excited.
Yeah, I mean, and just having that energy just from starting there, I can imagine his energy to move forward and keep going with the program and the process. Yeah, it must be tenfold. So we have Quentin on the phone with a question. Quentin, are you there?
I'm here. Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you?
Great. How about yourself?
I'm good. Good to meet both of you.
Great.
What I'm hearing is fantastic.
Yourself also.
I had a traumatic event happen to me not too long ago, and since that time, I have been going through issues with traumatic panic attacks.
Yes.
And anxiety and what doctors would call like a depression type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So my question was, how can this breathing work? Can this breathing work with something like this? I am also an athlete, and this whole experience is so new to me because it's like something has broken inside of the body, and it just does it on its own. And I know it's connected to the breath because I can feel it, but I can't get a hold of something in it. I can't put my finger on it because I don't have the words to express it. But maybe I thought I'd put it out there, see what you thought about it.
Well, I have a patient that have the same problems you have. In fact, I really had retired for a couple of years, and this one person, she called me. This was at the beginning of the year in 2011, and she said, "Dr. Hapi, would you take me and my husband on as clients because I have panic attacks, and I have not been able to work anymore. And my husband has 2 stents in his heart, and I'm concerned that the cardiologists are saying that they might have to put another stent in his heart, or he might be having a heart attack." And at that time, I wasn't taking any patients. And I said, "Well, okay, come and see me." And they both came to see me. And with her, because of her job, her panic attacks were so bad that she could not even drive anymore. Because when she got in the car to start driving, she would have the panic attack, and then she would have to go back home. So she couldn't work anymore. And so with this breathing that I do with you to help you get out of this panic attack, the first thing we educate you on is what is the mechanism that's causing you to have the panic attack. Well, what happens is that there is a part of the body called the adrenal cortex. And the adrenal cortex has a part in it that is like a hydrostatic pump. It's like a temperature regulator. And whenever you get stressed to a great degree, you release adrenaline from the adrenal cortex. So the adrenaline travels through your blood, and it comes up to your heart. This is a hormone. Adrenaline is a hormone. When it comes up to your heart, it causes your heart to start beating faster. When your heart beats faster, you don't know what's causing it to beat faster. All you know is it's beating faster, and then that's the anxiety. And the anxiety itself causes you to become panicky because you don't know what's causing you to have this anxiety, which looks like you're going to have a heart attack. And so in the process of not having any control over that, you tend to get depressed because you have a condition that when you go to the medical doctors, they can't explain it, nor can they give you anything to help you regulate it. Well, with her, we started her into this therapy whereby we started her into the breathing. And in this breathing and in this therapy, we started helping her to get the control of the adrenal cortex. So she could feel the attack coming on, and then by learning this special breathing, she could release the attack. She could stop the attack. Now, the way you stop this attack is you have to be able to trigger the parasympathetic nervous system. That system sedates your nervous system, whereby the adrenal cortex, it helps it to stop sending the adrenaline that's causing the heart to go into the anxiety. And so you learn how to stop that anxiety in real time. You learn how to stop it instantly. But first you got to learn how to trigger it. Now when that anxiety attack happens, they call it sympathetic overload or sympathetic overfacilitation, that your sympathetic nervous system is triggering they call it the 7th vagus nerve. They call it the vagus nerve. It's in your diaphragm. It's triggering that nerve to trigger your adrenal cortex to release that hormone that causes your heart to give you that feeling of anxiety like you're going to have a heart attack. So with this breathing, we help you to trigger a parasympathetic response that stops the release of that hormone. And as you start getting control of that, you start feeling better. Well, getting back to this case of this person who had the anxiety, who had called me at the beginning